It is the last place on earth where you can find a billion poor people. And so it's not just a billion poor people, but it's a billion people on a continent smaller than Asia. And they're rather densely stuffed together. The urbanization is really high. The peri-urbanization, the slums outside the city, is quite dense. And when I started thinking about what's going to happen in Africa, and I did this about 3 weeks ago, I really started to worry because I don't see how social distancing can work there, right? They're trying to do it. But the problem in Africa and social distancing is nobody has any savings. Not nobody, but 85, 90% of the population has no savings. That they're working for a wage in order to eat in a good year. And so you can't ask them to just buy a week's worth of food and then go in your house. And that house is literally within 3 feet of someone else's house. That doesn't jibe. And there's no refrigerator in there to keep food for 3 days or 4 days or a week. And so that nothing works in terms of the social distancing part. They have to go work. They have to go at a market to shop, and they have to do that on a 2 or 3 day basis at least. And then it gets worse, right? In terms of testing. So we don't know how many people have COVID-19 in India because they're basically not testing. We don't know how many people have COVID-19 in any country in Africa except maybe Ghana, which is starting to do a reasonable number of tests, because they're just not testing, right? So the United States is doing a terrible job of testing. We don't know how many cases we have here either, but we're testing almost 8 people per 1,000, right? Versus, South Korea is doing much, much better, and they're testing, about 10 people per 1,000. India's testing like 0.1 per 1,000. So we're about to enter this stage of the pandemic that's new. So for the first stage, we'll call that China. We don't believe their numbers, but they know how many cases there were, and they know how many deaths there were. Then we entered stage 2, which was Italy, United States, rest of Europe, Canada, the richer countries, the OEDC, the Asian tigers. And so we believe those numbers, and most of them are really bad. And we know that the counts are under. We know that the United States hasn't tested everyone because, I think I had this virus and I've never been tested. I was on a call with someone earlier today. They think they had the virus. They were never tested. So maybe we're off by a factor of 2 or 3. But now we're entering a phase where we have no idea. And we're never going to have an idea. All we know is this virus is about to hit India and Africa and the rest of the emerging markets. We know it spreads really quickly. We know it kills between 1% and 5% of everybody who catches it. And we will never know how many people get it. And we have no way to stop it because there's really no way to do social distancing in these countries. And therefore, a few billion people, let's just call it about half the world, is about to go through stage 3 of this pandemic, which is how fast is it going to burn through? And we're blind to it. We're basically in what I'm calling the fog of war, right? Usually when you have a war, you know where your troops are when you start the battle, and you know where the enemy is when you start the battle. And then as soon as the battle gets started, you have this fog that shows up and you can't really tell where everything is. Well, we have a battle going on. It's with a virus, and we're about to be blind. All right, so when I wrote up, I'll get to my article in a bit, but when I wrote up my article and started thinking about this 3 weeks ago, I couldn't find a single analysis anywhere in the world that was talking about what was going to happen in Africa or India. And then a few days later, I found a McKinsey report. So at least there's one out there. And they're looking at economic impact on the continent. And they called it an unfolding health and economic crisis that demands bold attention, as if anybody ever pays attention to Africa. What they forgot when they were thinking about this is the coming hunger crisis. And this is what really disturbs me, right? So for the whole talk here, that's the setup here. And now I want to focus in on what's going to happen in terms of hunger.